This is Kevin Altieri, director of Batman the Animated Series.
This is best friend of the show, Monica Cabina, artist and colorist on Batman The Adventures Continue.
And this is the DCAU Review.
Hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to a very special bonus episode here at the DCAU Review. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from us here. I am Cal. With me, my good brother, Liam. Liam, Merry Christmas. Happy Holidays to you.
Absolutely, to you as well, and of course to all our listeners, whether you're listening to this right now when it comes out and you're about to celebrate the holiday season yourself, or perhaps after the new year, whenever you happen to be listening to this. Hope you're doing well, and you're safe, and having as good a time as you can have this time of year. So, very excited to be here today to talk about what I think is a holiday tradition for both of us, and for probably a lot of other people listening to this, which is, of course, looking back at the Batman Adventures Holiday Special, which, of course, not only is it a tie-in comic to the main Batman the Animated Series continuity, eventually goes on to be made into an episode of the new Batman Adventures Holiday Nights.
Yeah, Holiday Nights.
But also this book features a just murderer's row, as you say, Cal, of a creative team on all of these individual little stories.
That's right. So most of the stories, actually, I think all of the stories are credited with Paul Dini as the writer on, at least one of the writers on all of them. So we have Paul Dini writing every story. He's joined by Bruce Timm on a couple of them. Never heard of that guy. And then Ronnie Del Carmen is also credited on at least one of the stories as well. So not only do you have Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, and Ronnie Del Carmen working on this, you have art by Dan Reba. You have colors by Bruce Timm. Bruce Timm is coloring most of these stories. Ronnie Del Carmen does art and color for one of them as well, the same one that he wrote with Paul Dini. And then you have some guy named Glenn Murakami. Ever heard of him? I don't know. He also did art on one of the Paul Dini stories. And then a guy by the name of Kevin Altieri and Butch Lukic, who keep those names in mind, because they may come up here in just a minute. But as you mentioned, this is a gift from us to our listeners. We are so thankful for you and wish we could give more to everybody that tunes in each and every week. But as a little thank you, we decided to just drop this little bonus episode and talk about what the comic book, not the episode Holiday Nights, which does a pretty faithful job at adapting most of, not all of, but most of the stories into animated form. But we wanted to talk about the comic book itself. So the original issue was released on December 16th, 1994, meaning about 28 years ago, if you're listening to this on our original release. And it's 64 pages long. It's available. It's been re-released in collections and various collected editions of Batman Adventures comic books. It's available on the wonderful DC Universe Infinite app that hopefully, knock on wood, if it's not too far into the future, still exists as a wonderful application that you can just access comic books directly from your phone or tablet.
That's right.
Imagine that. But we also, somewhere buried in my attic someplace, is the original issue that we have of this. But this whole issue just brings back the warm and fuzzies in a way that I don't know that too many comic books do to me when it comes to holidays. Like, we talk about Christmas with the Joker and Holiday Nights, and maybe a Bullet for Bullock, which we just reviewed. Check it out in the on the podcast feed. But not too many comic books can I say give me the nostalgic feelings of Christmas time like this one does.
Absolutely, yeah. It's and I think that comes from it's an easy read. It's a bunch of short stories. DC's actually kind of taken over the last few years of doing more of these holiday themed anthologies. They usually do one for the Christmas holiday and one for Halloween, and you get a lot of different creative teams telling shorter stories. And I think it's fun. It's a really easy to read. You don't need to, even if you weren't watching the series at the time, you can just pick that up, and it's a beautiful book, and it's a bunch of short stories. And then it feels very steeped in that Batman the Animated Series world. I think the biggest advantage for the comic, which makes me go back to it, even if I have already watched Holiday Nights during this period of time, is there is one story that is not in that episode for continuity reasons, thanks to Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero for ruining that. Just kidding. I know a lot of people like that. We haven't reviewed it yet. We'll get to that one day. But of course, the Paul Dini and Glenn Murakami created White Christmas story, a Mr. Freeze story where he decides to create a blizzard in Gotham City. A story which had a spiritual sequel of sorts just last holiday season when the Batman Adventures Continue team, with, of course, the great Jordan Gibson and best friend of the show, Monica Cabina, brought us, along with Mr. Dini and Alan Burnett, brought us a classic tale of Mr. Freeze once again trying to create a heavily winterized Gotham City around the holidays. So yeah, it's a very special book, I think, for that reason alone. And I think it's fun to kind of, even while you're watching, if you're watching Holiday Nights, to pull this out if you have it, or pull up the DC Universe app on your phone and just kind of read and watch along with it, and note the little quirks and the differences, because it's not only is it set in the original animated series in the comics, so you have different designs and there's different choices made between the two. The adaptations have some characters that weren't in the book, so I think both of them belong in the holiday tradition for a DCAU fan, because they aren't. Even though one is an adaptation of the other, it's not a one-to-one recreation. So,
yeah, I think for the book, at least in my head, so many of the panels from this scene, the initial story of Batgirl doing her Christmas shopping, in my head I can see the panel of Batgirl pulling the mask on and changing in the changing room and stubbing her toe while she's changing. I can see this shot that we're about to discuss of the Joker firing a gun, or about to fire a gun into Batman's head as he's holding his bleeding arm, and then shortly thereafter the bell crushing him and his hand sticking out underneath. Or, as you mentioned, the beautiful storytelling that Glenn Murakami does in that story of panels that don't have any dialogue, and Batman with this glow above his head making him look like a guardian angel, and Mr. Freeze looking so emotional at Nora's grave, sharing this moment with Batman. It evokes emotion, as you mentioned, having some callbacks in Jordan's and Monica's story, written by Paul Dini and Alan Burnett for last year's "'Tis the Season to Be Freezin' collection, was just fantastic. Yeah, so much of this is nostalgia, and that's what so much of what Christmas is to so many people. So we thought we would leave a little gift under the tree for you, and we were fortunate enough to welcome a very special guest this week, Liam, to talk about, in fact, one of the creators of one of these stories, to talk about that. And I'm very excited to share that with our listeners.
That's right, Cal. So without any further ado, we will be bringing you a conversation we had with none other than Mr. Kevin Altieri, friend of the show, has been on before, and spoiler alert for 2023, he's going to be on again. But we had him on to discuss his time with this comic, and also looking forward to Kevin returning to the world of the DCAU and DCAU tie-in comics, as he'll also be discussing a little bit of his upcoming work on the Batman The Adventures Continue Season 3. We get to pick his brain about, once again, working with Paul Dini and Alan Burnett, and working a little bit with, again, best friend of the show, Monica Cabina, as his colorist on the book. So have a lot of fun there chatting with him, and also kind of contrasting the differences between working on something for animation, drawing for animation and storyboards, versus drawing for a comic. So without any further ado, let's let Kevin have the floor.
All right, Liam. So we are bringing in our very special guest, and that is
Yes,
a
sir.
good friend of the show, Mr. Kevin Altieri. Kevin, we are here today to talk to you about this legendary, for me at least, and for
Absolutely.
Liam, this legendary Batman Adventures issue, which is the holiday special. And it's a series of stories that were told by various, really it's Paul Dini, I think, doing most of the writing. Paul Dini and Bruce, most of the writing. And then you have really a murderer's row of artists and creators: Glenn Murakami, yourself, Dan Reba, Bruce Timm, Paul himself, like all of these incredible artists and writers that work together to create this incredible collection of stories that I can remember the first time I found, my dad had like bought it and hadn't gifted it us yet. So I like snuck read it the first time. And I just remember reading through these stories and just being blown away by these individual little tale collections. You of course had a hand in drawing the what are you doing on New Year's Eve story, which is a fun little tale. We'll talk about it in a minute, but eventually got adapted into animation here. But starting at the beginning, what do you remember about how this project came together? Because it is, man, looking back now, it's a who's a DC animation.
If I remember correctly, I think it was Paul. He must have pitched it to DC, which at that time was back in New York, and Denny O'Neil and Archie Goodwin were still there, and the people involved, especially Denny O'Neil, I think he was the editor. I'm not sure at that time, but anyway, they loved it's like when I went and visited New York at one point, and I go to the offices with my friend Tom Mandrake, who I think was doing the Spectre at the time, and Jan Dursema, and we go there, and everyone knows Tom, and all that, and I'm walking in there, with my Batman crew jacket on and stuff, and I go and I say, hey, I'll say hello to Denny O'Neil, and because he knew me, and so he said, oh yeah, no, it's like, yeah, just go on back, he's over in Archie's office. So I walk in, and there's Archie Goodwin and Denny O'Neil.
Wow. Holy cow.
And I'm like, can't even, I don't even know what to say. It's like Denny, I got over with Denny, but there's Archie Goodwin, and it's like, and and it's like, hi, oh, we love your work on the cartoon. It's so, it's like, and then they're gushing at me, Archie Goodwin, and I'm like, you used me from one, like you're like, it's like you're beyond being my dad, roles and stuff that you wrote, and it's like, and that was kind of cool, I got to talk to Archie Goodwin, and they're fans of mine. I'm like,
wow,
what the hell is that? Anyway, but yeah, what was the question?
What was the process?
No, but I believe it started with Paul, and because they came in, and I remember actually it was Paul that said, hey, you want to do a part of the comic, and then Bruce, of course, is attached.
There you go.
And okay, this is not a complaint, but okay, everyone else, it's like, okay, so what's the story? Well, gonna do the part with their Christmas shopping leading up to Christmas, and of course, oh, Mr. Freeze in a snowstorm. How easy is that to draw? It's beautiful. Glenn did a great job.
Yeah,
it's great. It's like, in its simplicity, it's wonderful. But it's like, yeah, just okay, snowstorm. You get to do New Year's Eve. As a matter of fact, and it's like more pages too. I believe I had more pages to cover.
Absolutely, it is. Yep.
And there's more stuff, and then you get to, and it's like, well, it's a crowd. There's going to be a crowd at Times Square. That's what the story's all about,
right?
And I had Butch was I was the only person that got an inker, and Butch is fantastic, and Butch he interprets my pencils so well. It was like just beautiful, beautiful work.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and it was a lot, you know. And then I got the last scene where, you know, Butch, the one thing that I did not draw, Butch inked like this. He says, thanks a lot, you know. I'm like, sorry, New Year's Eve, you have to have the shot.
Right.
He's got Where's Waldo in it. There's like Where's Waldo, and that's Butch did that.
Oh,
Just as a commentary.
That's funny. That's great.
I was going to ask, I mean, I think when we had you on the first time, you talked about how, you know, how seminal those 70s Batman comics were to you, the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams era of Batman was to your personal love of the character. Are you channeling anybody when you get to put pen, you know, pencil to page and you're drawing your Batman for DC Comics? Like, is there any specific influence coming to mind? I know you are, at the end of the day, you're drawing your Batman, but are there specific influences from Batman artists?
Artist wise, yeah. I mean, you know, he didn't do a lot, but it's like Toth's always there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Adams, it's like they're all. I mean, you know, it's like there are things that Jim Aparo did that stick with you. You know, I mean, all, you know. I won't mention the lousy Batman artists. They get ignored.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of them too. But there's the guys that nail it. Like, you know, just Toth didn't do very many Batmans. You know, Black Canary and all that stuff. But man, when he did it, it's like there, that's it. You know, it's like, it's just wonderful. It's like his shortcuts. You know, it's like the cartoons, like the Super Friends cartoons are like no great shakes.
Right.
But you look at the model pack, the model sheets done by Toth, and it's like just the simplicity and beauty of his.
Absolutely.
I mean, his line work is just so elegant. That's something, you know, you aspire to do, you know. And here I am, like I'm, you know, over 60. And I'm still climbing, trying to get there. It's like, man, it's never ending. It's like, it's what, you know, it's just what you do. But yeah, no, it's influence wise. It's like, you know, you name the good ones. They're all great.
Right.
It's just hard to say which one specifically.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And then my other question, I think you already mentioned this a little bit with you and Butch having to add so much more detail. Is that the biggest difference between drawing like a panel for a comic versus, say, a storyboard or something for a cartoon?
Oh, well, a storyboard's an entirely different thing. You know? Because when you're doing a comic book, that's your drawing. You know, if an inker and a colorist come after you, it's still your drawing, you know, that gets shown. Whereas animation is, if you're doing the storyboards, yes, that's your drawing, and yes, it's going to be done, but there's so many more people down the line that you're guiding. Like, it goes from the storyboard, then there's a layout artist that has to interpret that storyboard panel into whatever. Even though it's digital nowadays, it's still the same process, you know. A lot of times the storyboards can be more complete, like on the Pearl Jam Do the Evolution video that I did. The layout was taken just because there was no time. The storyboards were done much more complete and elaborate, and that became the actual layout. So that went directly into the hands of an animator. So it was a much more direct line. But whereas on the, like, say, Batman the Animated Series, the storyboard gets interpreted by another artist and by another artist. So it's a different kind of drawing. You have to be very complete. And yes, the final product does look like what you drew. But there's like at least 10 people who've handled it after you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like you said, as compared to maybe an inker and a colorist, if you're drawing the comic. So it's
Fascinating. I guess one last thing that we'll ask about this specific story. So many of those stories were actually adapted into a new Batman Adventures episode later on, including your story. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you were involved with that episode at all. Have you seen it? I'm sure maybe you've seen it since then. How well do you feel like the adaptation was done? I don't think they have the blood. Like I think the blood was probably something that was not allowed due to standards and practices. But how well
do you have Joker shoot him? Which I was
he does shoot him.
I'm surprised that they got that through.
How well did you feel? How is it to see like your comic book art translated to an animated story, and how well did you think that it was done?
I think they did well, but again, my big complaint on after Batman the Animated Series and the Adventures of Batman and Robin, which is still the same series,
right.
You know, there was no people say, oh, they changed. It's like, no, that's not when they changed things.
Right.
The character design change really bothers me. Like that Joker bothers me.
It bothers a lot of people.
It's like, I'm just like, what?
He doesn't have lips.
What's with the black eyes? It's like he's not a mutant. It's like, I just don't like the blank-eyed Joker. It just really bothers me. Yeah.
As I say, Cal always calls it the spy versus spy Joker.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that assessment.
So
that bothers me. That does that, and it's like, and I'm sorry, you know, I can't say that it's a bad job. It's not.
Right.
It just like throws me. I'm just like, and maybe it's because I'm too close to it or whatever. But,
right. Which makes
well, and to your point, when they continued on to the Justice Leagues and Batman Beyonds and stuff, they changed those Joker eyes and they gave him the red lips again and everything. So I think even Bruce and everyone who continued on into those later series kind of realized that maybe the New Adventures Joker was a bit of a swing and a miss there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, there we go. Well, I pick this up every holiday season to read it and enjoy it, and it's just, again, it's one of those things. It's a core memory when it comes to Batman to me, to open this up and see the various different stories. Absolutely. One of my favorite holiday traditions, Kevin, is reading these stories, including that beautiful story of the Joker getting crushed by a bell.
Just great. What a comeuppance to give a guy like that too. Like,
so it's so, I like the different aspects of the story. That handing out of the Joker masks is brilliant. Like, how are you going to find the Joker and all of this, and the countdown aspect and the various different single panels with the numbers. And the one that sticks out to me as always is the one where Batman's like grimacing in pain, and you have the Joker with the gun standing over him, and then at the very end with the Joker's one hand sticking out from underneath the bell. Just really good. Always appreciate that, and thanks for coming on to chat a little bit and share about the process of this legendary story to us.
You're welcome. I'm glad that people like it still.
Absolutely.
It'll live on forever. Those are.
I think it keeps getting reprinted too.
Absolutely.
It does. I picked up a copy secondhand not too long ago, and it was in a collection of a couple of the other animals that came out. So it's on the DC app. It's available in collections. I still have our original copy of it someplace in a binder someplace. So.
You'll notice that in the Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red, which is actually a Christmas book, if you look at the tabloid edition, Paul gave me the New Year's Eve one again.
So
you've been typecast.
I was gonna say.
Takes place in an arena.
I feel like there's got to be one more. Paul Dini kept, I feel like the best things come in threes, so we're gonna have to get one more out of you and Paul somewhere down the line.
Yep. And there's always, and it's like, it's like, there's crowds. Gotta draw crowds.
Got you again.
Oh, man, so good. All right.
And then obviously I don't know if you have any upcoming projects or anything that you'd like to talk about or are allowed to
Oh.
talk about at the moment, but we want to make sure we
Yeah,
give you time for that.
it's actually quite a lot going on. Yeah, and again, it's like I did a comic that's coming out, Batman Adventures, the continuing Batman Adventures, where I got contacted by Andy Marino over at DC, and yeah, it's like last year. I think last time I talked to you guys, I was doing the holidays, the Harley Quinn, Black, White, and Red with Paul Dini. And and I just got through doing a comic story that'll be out in February, I believe, of Harley Quinn, Old Flames, written by Paul and Alan Burnett. And basically, they asked me, and I'm not going to give the whole plot away, but it's just basically Harley and Ivy have a fight. Harley's on her own, tries to get the girls together for a party, and it doesn't fail, and she's lonely. And she decides to look up her old her old college girlfriend.
Interesting.
Her old flame in college. And I'm not giving away too much, but this college roommate, who is this socialite, also was dating Bruce Wayne in college.
Interesting.
And I guess they were freshmen and he was a senior.
Very interesting.
And one of the richest guys in the world. So
well, looking forward.
Anyway, that's all I'll say. And it's like things just go on. It's a really fun script, and again, it's like I love drawing it. It's like, again, it's like, it's Paul and Alan Burnett. What are you gonna do? It's like it was a great, and I think everyone should just keep a lookout for that one.
That's awesome. Yeah,
it'll be coming out very soon.
So while we're talking about it, how is that working with the back with the Batman the Animated Series world that you grew up with, but also, or that you worked so hard on at establishing, but working with the new Batman Adventures designs that you hadn't really worked with, right? You were gone by the time Batman Adventures came around, right?
I really didn't even. I just do my Batman.
There you go. So
it's done somewhat in an animated style, but yes, I'm not slavishly trying to get that. It's like, when I draw Harley, I just draw Harley the way I draw her.
There you go. Right.
And she goes through, kind of goes through costume changes in this, but it's in the Batman. It's like I like not having the
circle, the yellow
circle. The circle's fine, but I like just having like the bat signal, the bat logo on your chest, and the cartridge belt. But I do that anyway.
Right. Okay.
So maybe that new Batman Adventure style fits a little bit more with what you prefer about your Batman.
But again, like drawing the characters, Gordon. No, it's my Gordon,
Right.
It's like I'm always going to draw the Bob Hastings original Gordon. Can't help it. Love it too much, So and DC's not, it's done the animated style, but it's not slavish to the model pack.
There you go.
And it's like in DC, they're great. They just let you. It's like, as long as they're getting the comic and they like, and they think the drawings are beautiful, it's like that's all it happens.
I love that. How was it like working? Oh, obviously you'd worked with Paul pretty recently, but what was it like? Was it like riding a bike, getting back on, working with those guys for what the?
Oh, I mean, yeah, Paul's one of the guys that I see, off and on anyway. It's. It really didn't feel like there's any lapse of time, at all.
That's incredible.
It's like in doing comics is so different from doing animation. It's its own kind of rewarding. It has its own rewards. That's how I should put it.
We're excited. We're excited to get that in hand here in a short amount of time, and we're certainly excited to encourage our listeners, if they're listening to this, are picking up those comic books more than likely. But certainly excited to get into this latest offerings of Batman: The Adventures Continue, and we got very excited when we saw your name attached to the. I
was going to say one of the things was to go a little behind the scenes was we were just hoping like it would be like the solicits would come out, so we didn't have to tiptoe around like
because we knew that you were attached to it, and we had an insider tell us that you were attached to doing one of the issues, but we were like, well, we don't want to put him in a position where we have to ask this if it hasn't come out yet and have him, don't want to do that. So
yeah, no, it's like, I think on Facebook and in social media, I think Paul has already kind of announced it. So.
Yes. And the solicits came out like a week or two ago where they specifically listed your name, so we were like, yes, we can.
Nobody's gonna get in trouble if we ask him about this.
No.
So good. Love it.
And they're pretty good guys over there at DC right now.
That's good.
That's good to hear. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The organization as a whole is going through its own changes, so that's good to hear that they have some people.
Yeah, it's like with the comics, it's like they were, it was a pleasure to work with them. It's like, again, it's all over the internet and stuff, but still.
Love it.
Good meeting good people.
As always, we had a blast. We're super excited about the comic and checking that out, and thanks for taking time out of your Saturday and your holiday season to spend it with us and talk about the
I got to get back to work.
Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays.
You too.
Man, Liam, that was so great, man. Anytime we get to have a special guest correspondent on our podcast, it's truly a great time. But somebody that was responsible for creating this world, that had hands on so many of these classic, not only Batman the Animated Series episodes, but specifically this story, and whose artwork, like I said in the intro, lives in my head. It's such a awesome experience, and such a blessing to be able to talk to Kevin. We're so thankful for him willing to share some of his holiday season to kind of talk about this comic and share some of his processes. Just a great guest.
Absolutely. He's very generous with his time and making time for us, as you said, Cal, around this holiday season, and with different time zones and everything going on too, it can be a little bit of a hectic thing to plan. So we're very appreciative of him taking some time to chat with us and to help bring you this special little holiday treat.
Absolutely. Don't forget, we will not have a new episode this week if you're listening to this when we originally dropped it. We're going to take a little break for the holidays. We will be back next weekend, though. Speaking of New Year's Eve, Liam and I will be, what will we be doing on New Year's Eve? We will be sharing a new episode. We'll be talking about our 2022 in review, and maybe doing a little bit of talking about what we'll be looking forward to in 2023 as we turn the calendar page. But seriously, thank you everybody who tunes in to listen. You guys are so supportive and loving and caring, and we received Christmas cards from some of our listeners this year with kind, generous notes, and you guys always go out of your way to share kind words and thoughts, and we are incredibly appreciative of you. As Liam and I always talk about it, if one person listens to the podcast and we're able to, bring some joy or nostalgic feelings, or share some community with them in our love of Batman the Animated Series, then I think the time that we invest is well worth it.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just big fans and fanboys like anybody else that's listening to this, and getting to share our thoughts with you guys is great, but you all sharing your thoughts back with us is definitely the coolest part of it. And of course, we hope you continue to do so, whether you want to do so on our Instagram or Twitter. You can find us on both places at DCAU Review. And of course, if you don't want to share a public message, our DMs are open on both too. So if you'd rather share your feedback privately, totally fine. We understand. You can feel free to reach out to us that way as well. So, and let us know how this comic is this part of your yearly tradition? Do you pull out your original copy? Do you have one of the collected editions that reprinted this story? Let us know what
maybe
this
you
means.
maybe you read it on the wonderful DC Universe Infinite app.
It's a wonderful app.
It truly is. No, but thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season, a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year. I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.